All right, treasure hunters, welcome back. Today we are finally going to be going through the Pressed Flower album. This was most certainly a school project of some kind. I'm not sure if it was for college, high school, or something like that, but this is going to be a 3-part series as of right now, because there is 60 pages in this book, and that means there is 60 individual flowers. Not all of them are labeled to the extent of the first few, but very unique to see. Here's our first page. Unfortunately, I am not going to try to attempt any of these scientific names, only because I will not pronounce them correctly. This first plant is known as columbine, and at the very bottom of the page on the bottom right, you can see it is dated May 13th. Year is still unknown, but I'm going to guess and say this is pre-1940s, just because of the smell of the paper, as well as the handwriting. Our next flower is called bluets. The notes describe it as having a fibrous roots with opposite little tiny leaves. Bluets are often found in open wood areas with pale, light blue petals, forming little tiny clusters. The next plant we have in our book is saxifrage. I've personally never heard of this plant, but the book describes it as having a fibrous root system, alternate leaves, and white petals. Saxifrage is a hardy little plant that is normally one of the earliest bloomers in spring. Not only that, it is one of the few plants that can rise up through rock, dirt, and soil and survive where other plants can't. And this one is perfectly taped into this page. And our next flower is called shepherd's purse. The student notes it has alternating leaves with tiny flowers, and the plant is famous for its little heart-shaped seed pods, and you can just make out where they once were. Shepherd's purses are very common along roadsides and fields, and it makes sense to see it in this book. And we have all seen this flower before. This is a dandelion. The sheet describes it as having fibrous roots and a simple leaf system. And not only that, it has those unmistakable yellow flowers or petals. What's fascinating is not only did it have to be a unique and exciting flower, something as simple as the dandelion was more than happy to be studied and saved in this book. Here's our next flower I've never heard of, and this is called the birdfoot violet. It does have some characteristics that would allow me to think that this is a birdfoot, but not many. The next plant we have is wild mustard. This is a plant that thrives in open fields and roadsides, and if I'm not mistaken, this is where the mustard seeds come from. And the next flower we have is called a catchfly. April 30th, this one's dated, and the catchfly gets its name because it's got a sticky stem that actually traps small insects. Our next flower is a violet, but violets are often thought of as being, of course, violet. But this is a white violet. And we also can see how carefully the student taped this one in. This flower is labeled arbutus, more commonly known as burberry. Not to mix it up with the perfume or cologne brand, burberry is a low-growing shrub with leathery leaves, which made it a popular plant for pressing in albums just like this one. This specimen is called an anemone. An anemone, or a wood anemone. Just in case you're wondering, that is spelled A-N-E-M-O-N-E. This is a delicate flower that would grow in shady wooded areas during the springtime, carpeting the ground with small blossoms. I'm sure you've seen this flower before as well. This is a wild geranium. Wild geraniums are common in woodland areas, producing a soft flower in the springtime. Here's a flower I'm sure you can just identify by looking at. This is a dogwood flower. The student very carefully taped each leaf back, making this the perfect view. Dogwood trees bloom in the early spring, and this one even has some of the branch attached to it. Here's another flower I've never heard of. This is called cinquefoil. Cinquefoil flowers have 5 yellow petals and alternate leaves, and this specimen has a good presentation on how the leaves and the petals would look. This is a May apple. The large umbrella-like leaves and a small single flower that grows beneath them. May apples are a favorite for doing projects just like this one because they had strong leaves. Our next plant is a huckleberry. Huckleberries had small white blossoms and 5 petals. Huckleberries are in fact shrubs that grow in the same family as blueberries, and their flowers are just as delicate as their fruit is flavorful. This page is labeled the Star of Bethlehem. These flowers would grow with grass-like leaves and small white flowers with 6 petals, and they would reference a star, and that's exactly how they got their name. These flowers were often found in meadows or even old gardens. This is a weird flower I've never heard of. This is the bladder champion. This flower has 5 petals with opposite leaves, which makes it stand out. And not only that, it has a inflated balloon-like body, which makes it look like a little bladder, giving it its name. The next one is flowering wintergreen. 5 petals, and it's normally a creeping growth, just like some vines do. Often found in wooded areas, forming little patches on the forest floor. And last but not least is the azalea. And in my opinion, the nicest part about this page is that the student made it in a specific way so that we could see the bloom in this presentation. Are not labeled to the extent as the rest of them. For example, moss pink is not really labeled like the other ones are, talking about the flower petals and colors. But moss pink is a low-growing plant that spreads across the forest floor, kind of like a carpet, with bright patches of different colored flowers, normally in the springtime. This flower is called a lupin. I've personally never heard of a lupin, and it normally has several different clusters of flowers, often in different shades of blue, purple, or even pink. I can definitely say I've heard of this one. This one is called peppergrass, and this is a member of the mustard family. It has a very skinny, slender stem with tiny little clustered pods, tiny little seed pods in clusters shaped as peppers. It's a common wild plant that's overlooked most of the time on open fields. Our next flower is a grape hyacinth. These are small blooming flowers that normally come up around the springtime and have dark blue and purple cluster blooms, often look like bunches of grapes. Thus is how they get their name. This one's labeled Spring Beauty. What is a spring beauty? It's a woodland flower that blooms very early in the year, sometimes even when snow is still on the ground. Our next flower is a violet, but I'm not 100% sure what kind of a violet it is. There isn't much to this one, but this one is just before bloom. This is a huckleberry blossom. Oddly enough, the next few flowers are not even labeled, so if you know what these are, leave a comment below. I would appreciate it. Now, interesting enough, our next flower is a locust. Just to show you with our dogwood flower we had in the previous episode that we are not only going for flowers that grow on the ground, we are also going for flowers that grow on trees. It doesn't say, but I'm going to guess that this is from the black lotus tree. It's a more common tree and had clusters of flowers similar to this one. The next one is a wild oat. Wild oats are extremely common grass found in fields and along the roadsides of small towns and rural areas. This one might look like a dandelion, but this is actually a robin's plant. A robin's plant, spelled Plantain, is a species of the aster family, and it has a very similar resemblance to the daisy. The next one is a chokecherry. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these before. Chokecherries are a very small tree or shrub that grows in clusters with white blossoms and later to be dark cherries or black cherries. This one's labeled tall buttercups. Unfortunately, the flower is a little bit deteriorated, but it is still a great example of this wildflower. This is a really common flower. This is a daisy bell, the most iconic wildflower that grows in fields, gardens, or in your backyard. Our next flower is wild parsnip. A nice deteriorated leaf, but still strong enough to stay in this album. The next flower is a wild strawberry, and if you look very closely, you can even see one of the berries still pressed in the album. It's a good thing they didn't get a berry any bigger than that, or it might have caused a lot more damage. Our next flower is a jack-in-the-pulpit. It is a woodland plant known for its unusual flower structure. Some people say it looks like a preacher standing inside of a church. Last but not least is the ragwort plant. I believe that this is the golden ragwort, but I'm not 100% sure, and if it is, I believe that is a toxic plant if eaten. This plant is called sorrel, a very common plant often found in fields, and even a native herbal medicine. It was known for giving a tart lemony flavor to soup, stews, and drinks. Chickweed is our next one. This is a very small example, probably pulled very early. And if you didn't know, chickweed supposedly helps support the liver. Our next one's a unique one. This is whorled milkweed. This milkweed is not universally illegal in the United States, but certain species have been banned in California due to their being potentially harmful to monarch butterflies. This one might not have as much controversy behind it as the last one, but this one is called a dewberry. Dewberries are extremely invasive plants. This one looks very similar to our peppergrass plant in our first video, but this one is called cowvetch, a purple flowered plant that is fairly invasive. Our next plant is called hepatica, a white or purple flower, which is supposedly edible but can be poisonous in large amounts. It's a low-growing, stemless wildflower, normally with 3 leaves. Our next flower is henbit. This one was pulled generally early in its stage. We don't get to see its very unique-looking flowers. To me, it looks like a person hanging over the edge of something. A very unique flower. It's a shame we didn't get one of the later examples. This one's most commonly known as cat's foot, the cat's foot, or even known as pussy toes. And I don't believe these ones changed very much since their original form. They are normally a silver, fuzzy green color. They even left one of the thorns on there for us. This is a thorn bush blossom, also known as the crown of thorns. Our next wildflower is again early in its stage, but this one is called a marsh marigold. These are always a very bright yellow color. And here again is a wonderful example of just the blossom, no leaves in this one, but just the blossom of the sassafras tree. And our next example, they ripped it right off the bush. Unfortunately, this one looks very sad compared to what it used to look like. This used to be a very bright, vibrant pink color. This is a Judaeus bush, or a Judaeus tree, traditionally native to South Europe and Western Asia. And you know, strangely enough, I couldn't find this flower. If you guys know anything about it, leave a comment below. The paper says it's spelled Metarue, and here's a earlier example of stargrass. And when I say earlier, I just mean earlier in its life cycle. Our next one is called a Juneberry. Juneberries normally appear early in spring, often before the plant's foliage emerges. Our next flower is labeled just violet, a very common flower. The most common variation of the violets, this one was either purple or yellow. I think these are 2 really good examples. This is known as the horse's tail. Supposedly, the horse's tail has antitoxic properties and as well as anti-inflammatory. You can just tell by looking at it, this one is some kind of a berry. This is a wild blackberry or wild raspberry of some kind. This is a exceptional presentation for this flower. This is a white clover. I bet you could walk outside and probably find a few of them. An extremely common flower, often what you step on when you get stung by a bee when walking in the grass barefoot in the summer. And our next flower is one I have not paid very much attention to, but I'll see it going forward from this video. This is a red clover. I assume the same premise applies, except this one is red versus white compared to our last one. And in the very back of the album is a mess load of 4-leaf clovers. I believe I counted 26 of them. 4-leaf clovers have been associated with good luck since at least the 1890s or earlier. And the unfortunate thing is, you can now grow 4-leaf clovers, which makes them no longer rare. With all that being said, I thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode of whatever we find. Whether it's an old photo album or an old flower album, we'll bring it to you guys and show it off. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, history waits for no one.